Hello again. I'm Tom Zelt, the host of this video series to help you get ready to study and tour in Israel. In the last few videos, we've been doing the southern arena, Judea in its areas, and further south, the biblical Negev and Midbar Tzin and Midbar Paran. Now in this video, we want to go north, up into the Galilee area, and that includes Phoenicia, Galilee, Golan, the Hula Basin, and further north. In order to kind of set that in its big picture, let's do a little bit of review. Turn to Regional Map 1 in your Israel Study Manual. Galilee is demarcated by the Carmel Mountain Ridge. Go ahead and draw that in. North of that is Galilee. Now the end of the northern part of the Judean Ridge juts into Galilee a little bit, and where it juts into Galilee is Mount Gilboa. More on that later. It's important to note that as you go north of the Carmel Ridge, it is a very different world. Galilee is different than Judah. Now you can divide Galilee into 4 regions. So let's do that. First, there's Upper Galilee. Go ahead and shade this in as it's marked on your map. It's called Upper Galilee because of its elevation. It goes up to 4,000 feet in elevation. It's a beautiful area, but biblically, not much happens there. Then there's Lower Galilee. It's called Lower, again, because its elevation is lower. We will spend a fair bit of time marking this in your next map, but we will divide Lower Galilee into different sections. There's Lower Eastern Galilee, Lower Western Galilee, the Jezreel Valley, and the Phoenician Plain. I'll include the Galilee Shvelah with Lower Western Galilee. So go ahead now and just shade in Lower Galilee. Then, on the eastern side is the Rift Valley. You're familiar with that by now, so go ahead and shade that in. The Lake of Galilee sits in this Rift Valley, but the rift actually starts at the north at the base of Mount Hermon Range, part of the Anti-Lebanon Mountains, and extends south as we've previously addressed. Now on the eastern side of the Rift Valley is the Golan Heights, the fourth of the 4 regions. The Golan Heights is a volcanic plateau. It averages about 3,000 feet in height. It's dominated on the north by Mount Hermon, towering over it at 9,200 feet. These are the 4 areas. So now we're going to go a little bit more detail. So find the Galilee detail map. Again, draw in the Carmel Ridge, which separates Galilee from Samaria and further south. You can shade in Upper Galilee, and then you can forget about it. Now we're going to focus on Lower Western Galilee. There are 4 ridges. You can draw them in. You can use the shadings on the map to locate them on the paper as you draw them in. Note that they run east to west, so there's no rain shadow like in Judea. The names of these 4 ridges and the valleys between them go like this. To the north is the Bet HaKerem Valley and the Bet HaKerem Ridge. The next one coming south is Bet Netophah. On the Bet Netophah Ridge, you'll see cities like Jotapata. That's where Josephus was caught. And you see a sea, that's for Cana. That's where Jesus turned the water into wine. The next ridge going south is the Turan Ridge. And after that, the one furthest to the south in Lower Western Galilee is the Nazareth Ridge. You'll notice that there's an N on this ridge, and that stands for Nazareth. Now, in between all of these ridges are very fertile agricultural fields. With these mountains in place, it helps us locate the next geographic feature we want to shade in. That is the Jezreel Valley. It's a flat, fertile valley that lies between the Nazareth Ridge and the Carmel Mountains. It's sometimes called the Esdraelon Valley. Water that falls in this valley drains towards the Mediterranean. Now let's move over to Lower Eastern Galilee. It also has 4 ridge lines of mountains, and you can draw them in now also. They're a little harder to see, but go ahead and draw them in between the shadings and the drainage lines. We're now going to add 3 mountains. First one is Mount Tabor. It is on the eastern end of the Nazareth Ridge. It is a high, rounded mountain that serves as a great landmark wherever you are in Galilee. Mount Tabor plays a role in the events of Deborah and Barak. At the end of the southernmost ridge of eastern Galilee, close to Mount Tabor, is Mount Moreh. It plays a role in the Gideon events. And on the eastern end of the Jezreel Valley is Mount Gilboa, which we've already talked about. It actually is at the northern end of the Judean Ridge. Now this plays a role in the events of Saul's life. Now we will add the valley that extends from the Jezreel Valley to the east, reaching the Rift Valley south of the Sea of Galilee. It starts right close to the Jezreel Valley and is pinched between Mount Moreh and Mount Gilboa. It descends to the east and joins the Rift Valley. This valley goes by two names, En-Harod or Bet Shan. You can see En-Harod on the western side of the valley, and Bet Shan is a city on the eastern end. Water that falls in Mount Gilboa seeps down through the limestone and comes out of springs in the Jezreel and Harod valleys. This is part of the Gideon events. In fact, the word En or Ein means spring, so this valley gets its name from one of the big springs that flows eastward to the Jordan River. Let's add the international trade route, the highway. The Carmel Ridge comes right up against the Mediterranean Sea, so it forces the highway to go inland. There are three options, the middle of which comes through the ridge into the Jezreel Valley at the fort called Megiddo. In fact, that's why Megiddo is there. It protects the international trade route. Now, as you go from Megiddo north, there are several ways, but two are more common. The first is to go across the Jezreel Valley, around Mount Tabor, between the ridges of western and eastern Galilee, then drop into the Rift Valley on the north side of the Sea of Galilee. The cities and villages on this north side of the Sea of Galilee will have familiar sounding names to you: Magdala, Capernaum, Chorazin, Tiberias, Bethsaida. Before we go further on this international highway, we have to add a couple more geographic features. The north shore of the Sea Valley is a volcanic sill. A sill is a lava flow. The Golan Heights to the east is volcanic, and the lava flow from Golan Heights filled in the Rift Valley. This made the area of the Rift Valley north of this sill into a lake and actually very swampy. The sill is called Rosh Pinna Sill, and the area north of it is called the Hula Basin. So the north shore of the Sea of Galilee is this sea. The upper Jordan, as it comes down from Mount Hermon, broke through this sill to enter the Sea of Galilee. You can actually whitewater down the Jordan River where it traverses this basalt rock north of the Sea of Galilee. And by the way, until modern times, when the Israelis drained the Hula Basin, it was known for its malarial-infested swamps. Remember, Peter's mother-in-law was healed by Jesus of a high fever, probably malaria, common in the area at the time. Now, the goal of the international trade route is to get to Damascus and areas beyond. So one common route is to go up the sill, turn east to cross the Jordan, then head across Golan Heights to Damascus. This is probably why the sill is called Rosh Pinna Sill. Rosh means head, Pinna means corner. The sill is the head of the corner where you turn east before you get into this infested, swampy area. At various times in the years of the biblical events, the international trade route found a couple of different ways to go. Now, I don't want you to mark them, but you can see them now as we trace them. Let's go back to Megiddo. If you start at Megiddo, coming from the coast, you could go east out the Harod Valley, then figure out a way into the heights of Jordan and the Golan. That's a little tricky to do because there's deep valleys that come off the Jordanian heights. Another way is to get to the north side of the Sea of Galilee, but instead of heading up to the Golan Heights at Rosh Pinna Sill, travel further up the Hula Basin to Caesarea Philippi, and from there find a way to the Golan Heights and head off to Damascus. One last geographic feature. This separates lower western Galilee from the Phoenician plain. There's a low grouping of hills on its western side that separates the flat territory of the coast from the hinterland of the hills and fertile valleys. This comes into play in the stories of Ahab and Jezebel. Okay, so let's look at some pictures so you can visualize what it is you've been drawing. Here's a picture of the Jezreel Valley, broad, beautiful farmland. Here's one of the valleys between the ridges of lower western Galilee. Notice how fertile this is, too. It's good agriculture. Here's a picture of Mount Tabor on the eastern end of the Nazareth Ridge. That would make Nazareth off to your left in this picture. And the international trade route, or the international coastal highway, would travel around Mount Tabor in this direction. This is the north shore of the Sea of Galilee. Note Golan in the background, the distance. And the north coast of the Sea of Galilee is this sill, Rosh Pinna Sill. Here's a picture of Mount Hermon, towering 9,200 feet above sea level. And here is depicted towering above the Hula Basin. I'm hoping you've noticed it's very green, nothing like the rock-strewn hills of Judea. This makes the social, economic, and political dynamics of Galilee very different from Judea. It also makes it more intriguing to all the world empires. Finally, let's return to the Galilee detail map and note a handful of cities, mostly New Testament related. We've already identified where Nazareth is. It's marked N on the furthest south ridge of lower western Galilee. It's actually out of the way, and it's very insignificant. It's located in a little bowl on the top of this ridge. Now, there are 3 cities on the north side of the Sea of Galilee that we want to identify, and then we want to connect them with the triangle. First, locate Bethsaida on the northeast corner of the lake. Then locate Magdala on the western shore. It's also called Tarichaea. Draw a line that connects these 2 cities, Bethsaida to Magdala. Now locate Chorazin a little off of the north shore, up the sill a little ways from the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Connect Magdala to Chorazin with a line, and then Chorazin back to Bethsaida. This is called the evangelical triangle. The New Testament has 70% of what Jesus did outside of Jerusalem being done in this triangle, which is only about 2 square miles. Right in the center of that triangle is Capernaum, Jesus' home base. That's the way Galilee is laid out. We are done with this introduction to the geography of the land where God has done these amazing things. The next video focuses in on Jerusalem, so we are familiar with that city as we get ready to study what God did there.